I'll never forget the look on Karen's face as the red and blue lights flashed across her perfectly maintained lawn. There she stood, arms crossed, that smug smile plastered across her face as she gestured dramatically toward our gated driveway. She was certain this was her moment of triumph after weeks of harassment. The two police officers approached slowly, and I watched from our security camera feed as one of them touched his earpiece, listening intently. His expression changed, and he turned to Karen with newfound skepticism. "Ma'am, dispatch is telling us this is a false report," he said firmly. "There's no emergency at this address." Karen's jaw dropped. "That's impossible. I heard screaming." "There's something suspicious happening in there," she insisted, her voice rising to that familiar shrill pitch I'd come to dread. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly known, was that the 911 dispatcher who took her call was my wife, Elaine. And Elaine had recognized Karen's voice immediately. My wife and I had moved into our dream home just 3 months ago. It was a beautiful property on the edge of the Oakwood Estates neighborhood, technically outside the homeowners association boundaries, but close enough that we shared the same street entrance. The previous owners had made that very clear to us. Our property was private, not subject to HOA rules. We had the documentation to prove it. But that hadn't stopped Karen Wilkins, the self-appointed HOA president, from making our lives increasingly difficult. It started innocently enough. A knock on the door just a week after we moved in. There stood Karen, clipboard in hand, fake smile firmly in place. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said sweetly, though her eyes were already scanning our property for violations. "I just wanted to let you know that your mailbox doesn't meet our community standards. You'll need to replace it within 7 days." I remember smiling politely as I explained that our property wasn't part of the HOA. I even offered to show her the documentation, but she waved it away dismissively. "That's a common misconception," she said with a condescending laugh. "All homes in this visual corridor are subject to our aesthetic guidelines. I'll leave you this copy of our rule book." She thrust a 3-ring binder into my hands before I could object. I later discovered it contained over 100 pages of ridiculously specific rules about everything from acceptable shades of beige for exterior paint to the maximum height of garden gnomes. The next week, she was back, this time complaining about our landscaping. The week after that, it was our porch lights. Each time, I calmly explained that we weren't part of the HOA, and each time, she became increasingly agitated. My wife suggested we just ignore her, which worked for about 2 days before Karen started leaving violation notices taped to our mailbox. Things escalated quickly after that. Karen began taking photos of our house from the street, sometimes spending 10 or 15 minutes documenting alleged infractions. Once, she even blocked our driveway with her golf cart, the unofficial vehicle of petty tyrants everywhere, while she measured the height of our hedges with a tape measure. When I asked her to move, she lectured me about community responsibility for 20 minutes. The final straw came when we received a certified letter claiming we owed $750 in HOA fines. That's when I decided enough was enough and installed a security gate at the end of our driveway. It wasn't particularly imposing, just a simple wrought iron design with a keypad entry system and intercom, but it sent a clear message: our property was private. Karen was furious. She left voicemails demanding the gate code for emergency access purposes. She cited non-existent community codes about right of inspection and threatened legal action. I saved every message, every note, and every piece of documentation of her increasingly erratic behavior. My wife, who works as an emergency dispatcher, suggested we might need a restraining order if things continued. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was working from home when our gate buzzer began ringing repeatedly. On the security camera, I could see Karen standing there, finger jammed against the button, her face a mask of determination. I reluctantly answered the intercom. "You need to open this gate immediately," she demanded without preamble. "I've received a complaint about your property and need to conduct an inspection." "Karen," I said as calmly as possible, "you know we're not part of the HOA. You have no authority to inspect our property. Please stop harassing us." Her face contorted with anger. "Don't you dare tell me what my authority is. I've been president of this association for 7 years. Open this gate now, or there will be consequences." I sighed. Karen, I'm working. Please leave our property, or I'll have to report you for harassment. You'll regret this, she hissed before storming back to her golf cart. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. I was wrong. About 20 minutes later, the security system alerted me to movement at the gate. When I checked the camera, I saw Karen on her phone, gesturing wildly toward our house. I turned up the volume just in time to hear her say, "Yes, I need police immediately." I heard screaming from inside the house, and now they won't open the gate. I think someone might be hurt. The address is 4287 Oakwood Drive. My blood ran cold. She was calling 911 and making a false report. I immediately called my wife at work, but she didn't answer. She was on duty and often couldn't take personal calls. All I could do was wait anxiously as Karen paced in front of our gate, occasionally glaring triumphantly at the camera. What I didn't know then was that my wife, Elaine, had been the one to answer Karen's 911 call. Elaine had recognized Karen's voice immediately from the numerous times the woman had come to our door. More importantly, she recognized our address and knew there was no emergency. Following protocol, Elaine couldn't simply dismiss the call, but she could flag it as potentially false while dispatching officers for a welfare check rather than an emergency response. She also made sure to note in the dispatch that the caller was a known harasser of the residents. Within 10 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up to our gate. Karen immediately rushed over to the officers, pointing dramatically at our house. I decided to meet them at the gate, punching in the code to let myself out while leaving the gate closed behind me. "Officers, I'm the homeowner," I said, holding up my ID. "There's no emergency here. This woman has been harassing us for months because we won't submit to HOA rules that don't apply to our property." One of the officers nodded, then touched his earpiece again. His expression changed as he listened to something, or someone, on the other end of the line. "Sir, is your wife Elaine Miller?" he asked. I nodded, confused. "She's on dispatch right now and has provided some context about this situation," he explained. Then he turned to Karen, whose smug expression was beginning to falter. "Ma'am, did you call 911 reporting screams and a possible emergency at this address?" "Yes. And they wouldn't open the gate," Karen insisted, her voice shrill. "There could be someone hurt in there." The officer's face hardened. "Ma'am, the dispatcher who took your call is this gentleman's wife. She's informed us that you've been repeatedly harassing this family over HOA matters despite their property being outside your jurisdiction. She also confirms there was no emergency when you called." The color drained from Karen's face. That's not true. I heard something. She's obviously covering for her husband." The second officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, all 911 calls are recorded. We have your exact words. You claim to hear screaming, but dispatch has noted that you've made similar claims about other residents who've opposed you in the past." By this point, several neighbors had gathered on the street, watching the drama unfold. Karen's eyes darted nervously between them and the officers. For once, she seemed at a loss for words. "Karen Wilkins," the first officer said formally, "you're being placed under arrest for filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services. These are serious charges." As he read her rights, Karen's face cycled through disbelief, outrage, and finally, fear. "This is ridiculous. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. You can't arrest me for looking out for the neighborhood." But they could, and they did. As they gently guided her toward the patrol car, Karen looked back at me with pure venom in her eyes. "This isn't over," she spat. "Actually, Karen," I replied calmly, "I think it is." The gathered neighbors watched in stunned silence as Karen was placed in the back of the police car. One of them, an older gentleman, slowly approached me. "We've been wanting to say something about her behavior for years," he confessed quietly. "No one had the courage to stand up to her." After providing a statement to the officers, I went inside and finally reached Elaine on her break. She confirmed what I'd already guessed. She'd immediately recognized Karen's voice and our address when the call came in. "I couldn't believe she'd go that far," Elaine told me. "But I made sure everything was recorded properly. Her false report is all documented." Karen's legal troubles proved substantial. At her hearing 3 weeks later, she was found guilty of filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services. The judge was particularly unsympathetic when our documentation of her months of harassment was presented. She received a $5,000 fine, 1 year of probation, and was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service. The cherry on top was the restraining order preventing her from coming within 100 feet of our property or contacting us in any way. The most satisfying consequence, however, came from within the HOA itself. An emergency meeting was called, and Karen was unanimously voted out of her position as president. Apparently, we weren't the only ones she'd been terrorizing. As she was escorted out of the meeting, her face was a mask of shock and disbelief. She couldn't comprehend that her reign of petty tyranny had finally come to an end.